Now to a bombshell new report from Axios. Apparently, senior Democrats, including Biden's White House aides, are very worried about Joe's reelection strategy centered around the January 6th riot. But they're, quote, worried about raising concerns in meetings because Biden's group of longtime loyal aides can exile dissenters. Here with more, South Carolina Senator Tim Scott. Did they forget about the 574 riots in the summer of 2020 that they were either, silent about, said nothing about, or that they said and lied to us and said were mostly peaceful, that, resulted in dozens of dead Americans, thousands of injured cops hit with rocks and bricks and bottles and Molotov cocktails, yes, and billions of property damage, where the Vice President, Kamala Harris, then a candidate at the time, actually tweeted out a bail fund after the Minneapolis police precinct was burned to the ground. Did they forget about those moments of insurrection by seemingly Democratic supporters that they didn't want to lose?
Absolutely, Sean, they did. Bottom line is simply this. Those summer riots were the most expensive riots in the history of America. Sean, the Democrats, they're losing their minds because they're losing their voters. Their race-based coalition, race baiting to keep the votes, it is crumbling before their very eyes. It's Donald Trump with the working class coalition that's attracting more working class people, black, white, Hispanic, Asians, because under Donald Trump, they have more money in their pockets. They're not talking about inflation. They're talking about we can't afford it. Same thing, better language. African Americans, Hispanics, white folks, Asians are coming together supporting Donald Trump because a closed, secured southern border means less migrant crime in poor neighborhoods. It means more open schools across our nation. And frankly, the crime that's devastating inner cities under blue mayors goes away with Donald Trump. Yeah. He will restore law and order. But 100%, the summer riots to pandering, the pandering tour of Joe Biden, failure.
It's very encouraging.
We need
the polls.
4 more years.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Donald Trump.
It's very encouraging, the polls I see, especially with a big part of the Democratic coalition and their base, which is African Americans, Hispanic Americans, young people. However, I don't like to be Pollyannish. Do Republicans need to look at independents, maybe those that might have been swayed by this sham trial in New York that don't know the details of what really happened in that case? Do they have to be worried about older people that might have been swayed by the fake news, industrial complex, which pretty much is the rest of the media, but for Fox News, the New York Post, and Wall Street Journal?
Yes, there's no doubt. One of the things we're seeing with this new working class coalition is it targets independent voters as much as it does any other group. However, jobs is important, but the justice system, it reeks under Joe Biden. It's one of the reasons why we've seen a coalition of new voters looking at Donald Trump. Bottom line is simply this. When the judge is making contributions to Joe Biden, when his daughter is raising hundreds, not millions, hundreds of millions of dollars for Democrat candidates, you can't get a fair trial. When Alvin Bragg runs for office with one objective, to put Donald Trump in jail, you can't get a fair trial. The bottom line is simply this. In order for us to clean out the Justice Department, fire Merrick Garland, and restore confidence in Lady Justice and her blindfold, we've got to fire Joe Biden and elect Donald Trump. Independent voters they require a fair and just America. A two-tiered justice system won't get that done. Weaponizing DOJ against your political opponents won't get that done, Sean.
Yeah, and by the way, I don't think he should have gotten a report like the Hur report that said, well, yeah, he did all these things when it comes to top secret classified documents, but any jury would probably see him as a nice old man that's very forgetful. That's not exactly equal justice the way they treated Donald Trump. And Joe may want to pay close attention because unlike the things they made up about Donald Trump, Hunter Biden, Joe Biden's son, implicates his own father as benefiting financially from his foreign business deals and exposes the lie that he never talked to his son, his brother, or anybody about those deals. I'd worry about that if I was Joe Biden, especially if he's not president in January of 25. Senator, great to have you. Thank you. Yeah, go ahead.
Thank you very much. God bless.
Hey, Sean Hannity here. Hey, click here to subscribe to Fox News YouTube page and catch our hottest interviews and most compelling analysis. You will not get it anywhere else.